Hey, what's up? Welcome back to another edition of the Mandatory Live Fight Preview Show. We've got a great one for you this time because, of course, Canelo Alvarez back in the ring against Bryan's fellow Puerto Rican, Edgar Berlanga. So, Mexico versus Puerto Rico, one of the best rivalries of all time. We are going to be breaking down the whole entire fight. We're also kind of gonna go through the card as well. Erislandy Lara, Danny Garcia, the co-main. Calen Plant is fighting. Cool boy Stephen Fulton is going to be back as well. This card is great, Bryan. But before we get into all of that, if you like the content, hit that like and subscribe button. Also, follow us on our social media channels. We're at the Mandatory TKO, and you can also find us on the audio side as well. So if you got a couple of minutes, make sure to leave us a review and give us a 5-star because all of that helps the channel and the show grow. And if you already have done all of that, we do appreciate you. Also, keep the comments coming. We already got some heat from Jesus, who we know loves Canelo. If you watch the show, Jesus does not like Canelo. But
We don't
you're
like
also
the card either. We'll
the
get to
card,
you later.
Jesus.
We'll
We're
get to
gonna
you
get to the
later.
comments.
I love it. He's always so polite. Saludos. Nobody gives a fuck.
Yeah, so we are going to get into all of that as well, but I think the card is great. So let's start off right there, Bryan. Your thoughts on the card that we're getting this Saturday?
Well, unlike our guy Jesus, I like this card. Now I do think there are a couple of very maybe more than a couple. There are quite a few one-sided fights on this card, but I actually think it's more well balanced than a lot of what you're going to see. It's more well balanced than the average zone card. I'll tell you that. I think we get to see Canelo Alvarez again. We'll see. We'll see if Edgar Berlanga has a chance, which we're going to talk about in this bout. He's a heavy underdog and would have statistically one of the biggest upsets that we've seen in recent years. Some would say ever. If he were to pull this off, the most captivating fight on the card is probably the co-feature, which you and I, Shantelle, are very excited about with Erislandy Lara and Danny Garcia. Now, I wish that this fight had taken place sooner. This was supposed to take
It
place
was supposed to last year sometime, and
Barclays
apparently,
Center. Yeah.
yeah, it was supposed to be in New York, and I don't know what happened there. Business in boxing is sometimes a little bit tricky, and that's probably also why we haven't seen Stephen Fulton in the ring for quite some time. This is also a card that has Romero on it, sneakily. That's going under the radar as well. That Rolly's back on this card.
He
But
can
we
lose
are
that fight, by the way.
he has to have a
That's
good
not an easy
performance.
fight.
Not at all. Not at all. But you know what? Let's get right into it, Bryan, because the lines for this one, not very. I mean, like, I don't think people are surprised about the lines for Canelo and Edgar Berlanga, but straight up on the money line, Canelo Alvarez a minus 1800 and Edgar Berlanga is a plus 1020. Is this fair?
Probably.
Yeah, I think Canelo could possibly even be a bigger favorite, but let's get right into it, Bryan. Your thoughts on how this fight is going to go, and does Edgar Berlanga actually have a chance at winning?
I'm gonna answer the first part first, just because like that requires a little bit, not much though. I think with this card, I mean with this the main event on this card, that listen, usually I'd be the one saying Canelo Alvarez minus 1800. That's too much. This is boxing. Anything could happen. Yada yada yada. All those things could still be true, but how is he gonna lose this fight? Here's the thing about Canelo Alvarez: 65 fights in his career, 34 years old, has been a pro for 19 years. He's never been dropped before in his career. And Edgar Berlanga's one calling card that you're gonna have to look at if you seriously think he's an underdog that can win this fight is his power. Edgar Berlanga has been dropped before, has also been dropped as an amateur before. Badly, I would add. Canelo Alvarez has never been dropped. Like at the times we've seen him get rocked, he just kind of whips his head back and then he just continues to fight and move forward. I just think with Canelo Alvarez, he is one of the best pound for pound in the world and has been for, I checked this, actually 11 or so years he's been on the pound for pound list. Basically since before the Floyd Mayweather fight, which is how he ended up getting that fight to begin with at the time he got it. And from then, obviously, we know historically he's gotten better. Do I give Edgar Berlanga a chance? I mean, you have to give a 1% chance at least because this is boxing. At the end of the day, he does have power. It's just like, other than just catching somebody, right? There are things you have to do to catch somebody. You have to set traps. You have to be effective defensively. You have to be able to counter. You have to be able to fight off the back foot, especially if you're, longer fighter in this case, which he is. You're going to want to use your range, your reach advantage. But is he going to be able to do those things against Canelo Alvarez, who, despite being 5'8", maybe 5'8", we've seen him outbox taller opponent after taller opponent after taller opponent, longer opponent after longer opponent after longer opponent, because he's able to get in and out of range so succinctly. He's great defensively. He's just an epic body puncher, which is part of how he closes that gap as well. Like, Edgar Berlanga is going to be tested in a way that he's never been tested before. That's the obvious. And I have a couple of bets. We'll get to it, but I have a couple of bets that I've already placed on this fight in the Action Network app.
Yeah, I think I thought you were going to break down the fight first and then go into the answer of if Edgar Berlanga has a
Do we need
chance.
to?
But I mean,
I mean,
yeah,
I kind of did, but I just, I mean, I don't know. I'm struggling with this one. I gotta be
oh
honest.
man, I didn't think you would say that with those Puerto Rican boxing gloves in the back.
Well, I told you this doesn't count. All
It
right.
does count. It
On
counts.
my YouTube channel, I have a video there, which is basically tying in Mexico and Puerto Rican boxing history and the fights that really, really sort of highlight that era and what actually makes that rivalry that rivalry. This is not that, because all those fights are pretty much 50-50 fights.
And let's start there for me at least. This is not even close to a 70-30 fight. I would probably say it's like an 85-15 fight. And I only say that, and it's not a diss to Edgar Berlanga. It's just the fact that Canelo is so experienced. And in this fight, Edgar Berlanga's one chance is going to be that puncher's chance because he does have that power. Is he going to be throwing his hands a little bit more? Is he going to be a little bit cautious? Are we going to get a fight that's like him and Jermell Charlo? Right? That was a fight for Charlo against Canelo where I was like, that's not what I expected from him. And he just tried to survive the whole entire time. Now, I think that's the biggest question heading into this one. I thought that Edgar Berlanga has improved from Jason Quigley, from McCrory. He's gotten better. But is he on the level of Canelo? Not even close. This is such a lopsided fight that it's unfair to Edgar Berlanga, but he can only gain off of this. So there are some pros in this as well for him, because after this, I mean, I think Edgar Berlanga, if he puts on a pretty good fight, he's going to get whatever he kind of wants after if he's able to survive longer than people think. And we are going to get into our bets. We're going to get into your comments. But I think the star power Edgar Berlanga has. He has the star power. He brings out the rappers. He's friends with Fat Joe. Like, we've seen all this, right? The way he carries himself like a superstar. And I think he has that going for him. And I think Edgar Berlanga is good for boxing, to be honest with you. I think he's a guy that's captivating, and he has all of those attributes. And the fact that he went on that crazy knockout streak really put some hype on him. And then he didn't have a knockout for quite some time, and we were waiting for it. But he's looked better in his last two fights, and he's wanted this Canelo fight. There were rumors that he was going to get it last year, and everybody was like, I don't know if he's ready, but he's getting it. I really would have liked to see him and Jaime Munguia fight rather than him and Canelo, and then the winner get Canelo. But, we saw what happened to Jaime Munguia. But Edgar Berlanga does have a chance, but he's not skilled like Canelo. It's just his power. That is his one chance. So he's got to let his hands go. But the big question is he going to, or is he going to be more cautious? So I'm more curious into seeing what kind of Edgar Berlanga we see in the ring. And he's been talking all week about how his skill is a little bit underrated. But when you're fighting in Canelo, that's different, right? Canelo's going to get to the body. Canelo's going to move around. Canelo's a great counter puncher. And I think Canelo's going to be able to break him apart later on in the fight. So, I said, how is this fight going to go? How am I betting? And I'm kind of already telling you how I think this fight is going to go. I think Canelo Alvarez is going to impose his will. He's too smart. The IQ is too high. He's going to get to the body. He's going to counterpunch the hell out of Edgar Berlanga. And I don't know if Edgar Berlanga, how much respect he's going to give Canelo in the ring. Because he could get in there and be not throwing as much. We could get another Charlo Canelo fight where he's just surviving a little while. But I just think when it gets to the mid rounds, Canelo is going to be breaking him down. And I have Canelo winning in rounds 5 through 8 at plus 160. And I say that because I think it's going to either happen in round 6 or 7. And initially, I was going to take rounds 1 through 6. But I think Canelo, I think he's going to, get into a rhythm. Like how he did with Jaime Munguia. And I have rounds 5 through 8. And listen, when you're fighting a Canelo Alvarez, like Bryan said earlier, one of the greatest of this generation, he's been like pound for pound on that list forever. At one point, he was pound for pound #1. I don't think you could deny that. Jesus is going to hate me saying that. He's still on my top 5 for pound on the list. But Edgar Berlanga, unless he's going to knock out Canelo Alvarez, and listen, there's good odds for that because that's the only way he's going to win. He's not going to beat him on the card. So if you're like riding for Edgar Berlanga, you're like, you know what, he's going to win. Bet on that knockout because that's where the value would be if you're riding with him. But Edgar Berlanga, to me, he has to knock him out to win. Bryan, how do you think this fight is going to go, and how are you betting it?
Okay, so the 5 to 8 is interesting. I want to talk about that for a second because the over under is actually 8.5, which I think is real interesting. I do think a lot of people are gonna lean, if not straight up bet the under, if we're talking about just from a purely betting standpoint. And I do think a lot of people think Canelo's going to get him out of there very quickly. I don't. I actually don't. Canelo Alvarez hasn't gotten a knockout in 3 years. The last one was Calen Plant. That was in round 11. I think that while he may drop Edgar Berlanga early, I don't think he's going to stop him very early. Like he kind of takes his foot off the gas, and I think in a sick way that Canelo Alvarez might enjoy this one a little bit. He may carry Edgar, if not to the 12th, like you may carry him a little bit, and because it sounds like there's like some sort of a budding rivalry there, or at least Edgar Berlanga is trying to make it one. And I think with Canelo Alvarez, he's probably going to make him pay for that, and not sort of like, hey, I'm not going to shoot you in the head. I'm actually going to shoot you in the foot first, then in the ankle, then here. Like I'm gonna just take you piece by piece and maybe accumulate the punishment, and maybe he gets him out of there in the later rounds. I don't think this is going to be like a super early stoppage. What I actually have placed so far is Edgar Berlanga to get knocked down between rounds 1 through 6. This is something that Canelo Alvarez did against Jaime Munguia. This is something that Canelo Alvarez did against, I believe, Jermell Charlo. And we've seen him knock down plenty of other fighters very early on, but he's done it recently multiple times. And Edgar Berlanga, as I mentioned, has been dropped before. And Canelo Alvarez, you could just see the counter shot, probably a body shot, maybe that left hook uppercut combination he caught Jaime Munguia with in round 4. Maybe it's something like that, but I do think that he drops Berlanga early. The thing that I'm most confident in is that Edgar Berlanga touches the canvas at least one time. I'd be stunned if he doesn't.
I mean, Coceres dropped him. Right? Coceres dropped him. He's got a questionable chin. That's always been a rumor. Not even a rumor. I mean, when Coceres dropped him, listen, that's what everyone was talking about. He couldn't get Steve Rolls up and out of there. Like there are so many questions, but he's gotten better, right? Those are a couple of years removed. So I'm not judging him on that. I'm judging him on his last 2 fights, and he's gotten better. But I just think that Canelo was going to be breaking him down. Edgar does not have the best defense. He's going to get hit a lot in this fight.
Yeah.
And especially to the body. And I think Canelo's just going to have his way with him. Can he carry him to like the 9th round? He could. But I don't think Canelo wants to. I think there's been a lot of smack talk on Canelo's name, Jesus being one of them. And I think Canelo also wants to make a little bit of a statement because what is everyone saying with this fight? That he's cherry picking. That's what they're saying.
They said it last fight too, and probably the one before that and one before that. Yeah.
So I think he wants a good performance. And I think this is a perfect opponent for Canelo, to be honest with you.
Let's get to comments.
Yes.
The last thing that I'll say before we get to comments is I will give Edgar Berlanga credit because again, this is somebody who I covered in New York City when he was an actual prospect, when he was fighting on Evander Holyfield cards, at Resorts World Casino in Queens. You know what I mean? On like the CBS Sports Network before he was ever assigned to Top Rank and these sort of things. And obviously fellow New Yorican. Like, I was there when the knockout streak was just starting before it made it to ESPN, but it's just tough. Like getting better is one thing, and he has gotten better. I'll give him credit for that. He absolutely has. He's better than where he was when he left the top ranked deal. How much? I mean, we're gonna find out Saturday because Canelo Alvarez is gonna be the ultimate test in this weight class. But from the Romero Alexis Angulo fight, from the Steve Rose fight, like I thought he looked better against Jason Quigley, and he was actually pretty self-aware in that press conference. I was at that fight too, pretty self-aware in that press conference afterwards, talking about how he was pissed that he didn't get the stoppage, and he actually discussed why that was the case, where he thought his punch selection could have been better.
And Jason Quigley was like a weird fight.
Yeah,
like he's a tough guy, Jason Quigley.
Yeah.
So that's more of a tougher fight actually. And I thought Berlanga, like I said, he's impressed me the last 2 fights, and I know there's a lot of hate on him, but I think that just comes with his star power. Like either you love him or you hate him, and that's why he's great for boxing.
Yeah,
he's great, and he's only going to gain off of this.
And he was trying to basically like say he should have let his hands go earlier, but also say why. Because if you remember, he dropped Quigley in rounds 3, 5, and then twice around 12. And then the last fight against Pradris McCrory, I thought was actually his best performance. But it's not to say like it's a performance that makes me think he's going to beat or even, worry Canelo Alvarez, so to speak. Those are 2 different things, But let's get to some comments because we've gotten a bunch. Let's see. Frank Castle, morning.
Thanks, Frank, for joining the show. Friend of the show, Frank.
Al the Pow's here. Let's see. Michael 12. This is funny. Michael 12. Canelo only really knocks out Europeans. I'm not gonna read the last part, but
I mean, he stopped Calen Plant.
What is Calen Plant's back? I know he's white, but like, I don't
but
know
he's American, okay? Yeah. He's American. Listen. And he's a little wavy. He's like, he's a little wavy for a white boy. You know what I mean? Like he's like that white, like usually like from a girl's perspective, it's like it's like when you see like a white boy like that, you might look at him twice, and you know what I mean? Like normally you'd be like, oh, okay, nothing against a white guy. I'm just saying. Anyways, let's get back to the comments. That's not the point here.
Yeah.
Hustle man, Canelo by knockout under 8. Berlanga will gas out by the 3rd or 4th round. That's when Canelo will turn it up. You know what? I think Berlanga, what he's shown in his last few fights, like his conditioning isn't the problem. He does maybe gas out a little bit later, early on in his career, but I don't think that's going to be an issue for this fight. But I think the punishment that he takes from Canelo around that's what's going to break him down. So Hustleman, if you're saying that, by the way, Hustleman, friend of the show, I agree with you.
His patience has improved. Like he's gotten more patient, but part of that is also like he took the time to figure out what McCrory was doing in his last fight, to the point where I'm not sure he landed anything in round 1, but it didn't matter. Like he realized like, all right, I'm better than this guy. I could throw this round away. We'll see what kind of preparation he's done for Canelo Alvarez, because Canelo Alvarez is a whole different beast.
Yeah, for sure. Let's go to Al the Pal here. Canelo wins. Oh, did we already do this one? Oh yeah, we did.
Something very similar. Yeah.
Jesus, we gotta go to Jesus. We gotta get to this.
He hates
2 bums, fake Nello and Berlanga. I think don't represent Mexico and Puerto Rico classics. Okay, so you agree with Brian there. I still say it.
I don't call Canelo fake Nello or Canelo. Well, somebody else wrote here in the comments.
Oh my goodness, the Canelo hate is real this morning.
I mean, this is the thing, and this is why Canelo Alvarez is going to get shit. He hasn't had a fight that was, I can't say 50-50 because this wasn't 50-50 either, but the last fight where he fought somebody on his level, so to speak, was Dimitri Bivol, which is now over 2 years ago. But that's also revisionist because a lot of people thought Canelo Alvarez, all right, he's coming back up to light heavyweight and he's just going to beat this dude. There are people who knew of Dimitri Bivol who were like, hey, well, let's see. But I didn't see a whole lot of people picking Bivol to win that fight.
I actually bet on Bivol to win that fight.
Yeah.
I was like,
you're one of not that many, I'm telling you.
Yeah. And that was just because Bivol's so skilled, but also it was like, we saw what Canelo did against Kovalev, but Kovalev wasn't the same Kovalev at that time. So,
he's still dangerous, but he wasn't the same.
And that's not
Andre Ward. So
but don't get it twisted. Like Canelo at that time, everyone was talking about how he was just taking over weight classes.
Yeah.
Like, we were talking crazy about how many
People were
weight
saying he could go
classes
to heavyweight because heavyweight
we
was not great at that point.
so it also just shows you, and Jesus is going to hate this, the greatness of Canelo. Because even though we say that he's, well, I don't say, but a lot of people are saying that he's cherry picking at this point, maybe not the most competitive fight because we want to see him against Benavidez. And if it's not going to be Benavidez, we're always going to say that this is the fight that we don't want.
Hustleman has another comment. Then I'm gonna go to you, Big Surge, because your comment I find very interesting. Hustleman, just like how Jared Anderson lost against Bacoli, we we definitely talked to some of you guys about that. Because we had thoughts on that one.
Yeah.
Berlanga would lose the same way, but I think a little worse. I think this is a very good assessment, honestly. Like I think it's gonna be a different style. Canelo Alvarez is obviously gonna move more than Bacoli did.
Don't even start on Bacoli, man. Like the comments for Bacoli after that fight was they were going hard for him. Let's just say
Yeah,
that.
he had Muhammad Ali's footwork apparently when we were talking about this. But I think Canelo Alvarez absolutely like this could be similar and probably worse and in a different way, but that kind of feel where the young power puncher just makes all these mistakes and the veteran takes advantage. Big Surge. I'm Mexican and I want Canelo to put the biggest beat down on Berlanga only because Berlanga said go back to Mexico. That was stupid of
No,
him.
did
But
he say
besides
that?
that, I want a great fight from him. So like fighters say shit.
Yeah.
I actually missed this. So Big Surge definitely let us know
Yeah.
where so I can go peep that. But like Edgar Berlanga is not, he's not like he's not the brightest dude. He's probably not going to win a
But
Pulitzer. You know
also,
what I mean?
I'll
Like,
say,
I don't. I think dudes in this sport, particularly, be saying shit that they ultimately regret later, especially after they lose, which
well,
he
I think
probably
for
will.
Berlanga for this fight, like you can see him turning it up. You can see him talking smack a little bit
Yeah,
more,
of
but you can
course.
tell
He's
it's
trying to
not
hype
like,
himself up. You know.
yeah, and I get you have to sell the fight, but you can also tell that it's not like genuine or it's not like he doesn't believe what he's saying.
To
Like
go back to like,
I think at
don't.
one point he was like, "I'm gonna knock you the f out," and I was like, "Berlanga, I don't think you
Well,
even
he
believe
should
that."
believe that, but like,
Yeah, but I didn't believe it when he said it. You know
but
what I mean? Like I
go
was on
back
my
to go back to
yeah.
Mexico is a bit much. Like, come on, dude. Like,
Uh,
especially in 2024. Like, what are we doing?
yeah, all right. Well,
Um,
let's get to the co-main because I think
And
we
Canelo's gonna remember shit like that. But this is why I'm saying I don't think this is gonna be like a first round, third round. Like there are people who think he's gonna get him out of there quick. No, I think Canelo's gonna enjoy this one, baby. I think Canelo's gonna enjoy this one and make it last for I don't know if it's all 12, but he's gonna make it last real quick because Canelo Alvarez talked about him getting some shit. Listen, the level of opposition he's faced recently: Munguia, Jamel Charlo, John Ryder, Gennady Golovkin, Dmitry Bivol. That's in order. And before that, Caleb Plant, Billy Joe Saunders, uh, Yildirim. Who
yeah.
cares? Callum
That was
Smith,
a tune up. That was a tune up though.
right? Callum Smith, Sergey Kovalev, Danny Jacobs, like, and Rocky Fielding, and then the Golovkin fights. So like, it's kind of uninspiring like that other than like select fights there, so this is why he's gonna get shit for this too.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's get to the co-main because I think that is probably the best fight on the card, the most intriguing one for me. Erislandy Lara is the favorite, minus 245. Danny Garcia is a plus 190. Straight up on the money line. Brian, both of these guys. Well, Lara has fought once earlier this year.
Yes.
He's fought and got the second round victory, if I'm not mistaken. So he had a pretty great showing in that. But that was after a pretty long layoff. Danny Garcia hasn't fought since fighting Benavidez. Not David, Jose. Let's right. And
the lesser Benavidez, yes.
that was after he lost to Spence, if I'm not mistaken, right? He lost to Spence and then he moved up to 154. Like it's been so long that we've seen Danny Garcia in the ring to think back on that Spence fight. Like even that was a layoff. And then we waited even longer to get this fight with him and Erislandy Lara. This is for a title. Maybe going a little bit under the radar, but this is a title fight. And this is an Erislandy Lara that's a little bit older, but a Cuban fighter that is tough, and he still has it. So, Brian, how are you betting this fight? And does Danny Garcia, after such a long layoff, like, does he have a chance in this fight? Or are we going to see rusty Danny Garcia against an Erislandy Lara that fought, I think, in March, if I'm not mistaken?
It was in March. It was So okay, I'll get to because I really like both of these dudes. Really like both of these dudes. Honestly, I wish this fight happened sooner, but we're getting it when we get it. Boxing is boxing. Earlier this year, Erislandy Lara fought Michael Zarafa, and I was like, huh, Michael Zarafa. That's a very familiar name. And I was like, didn't Peter Quillen almost kill this dude before? And yes, this was the case. I remember because I was working at CBS at the time doing the ticker. And I remember watching because this was like around the time Mayweather fought Andre Berto. And during a shift, I saw Zarafa get taken out like on a stretcher or whatever because Peter Quillen destroyed him. And then a few years later, I look up and Zarafa, to his credit, immense credit, turned himself into a contender who stopped Jeff Horn, who stopped Anthony Mundine, although at the time, probably not as much of an accomplishment because Anthony Mundine was just getting rocked by a lot of people at that point. And he earned the Erislandy Lara fight. Now, Lara has been low key on a tear. If you've been paying attention at all, he's done it against lesser opposition. With all due respect, including to Gary Spike O'Sullivan, who follows me on Twitter. Also got knocked out by Lara. Lara also beat Thomas Lamana, Greg Vendetti, Ramon Alvarez, Canelo Alvarez's brother. So he didn't beat Canelo Alvarez, but he made sure to take it out on his brother Ramon. And this is the line of opposition we've seen since the draw with Brian Castano, which was also in Barclays Center, which was controversial. I think a lot of people thought in the arena, at least at the time. I remember hearing a lot of people saying that they thought Lara should have lost that fight. I do not. I do feel like Castano fought a great fight, and he became a somebody because of that performance. So Danny Garcia, on the other hand, we haven't seen him in over 2 years against the Jose Benavidez fight. Gave up some rounds, won a majority decision. I didn't think it was a draw, but I do think that Benavidez won 3, maybe 4 rounds. I have to rewatch that fight, which I will do before this fight. And then Errol Spence was the fight before that, and that was almost 4 years ago. So Danny Garcia has been really inactive, and he's talked about, just dealing with like issues and things of that nature, just away from boxing, which obviously, that's more important. And he's become more of a businessman. Like he's promoted some cards in Philly of fighters from here in New York City have taken part, and obviously in Philadelphia and others. So he's getting into that phase of his career as well. I just think Lara wins this fight by decision, and the decision is not up yet, not available. Lara, as you can see here, minus 245 on the money line, was 230 at a couple spots yesterday, but ultimately I think Lara's going to outbox him, win this on points in a fight where I don't think it's going to be a wipeout. Probably 116, 112 ish, maybe 115, 113 ish. Maybe it's a majority decision, but I think Lara's gonna edge this one out.
Yeah, I think when I take a look at how active both these guys have been, Lara has really, like Brian said, been on a tear. And I think it's kind of gone a little bit under the radar because he is sneaky older and people forget that. But he is such a skilled Cuban fighter. And Danny Garcia, when you go back to that Jose Benavidez fight, that was his first fight at 154. And that was a fight where he didn't ever hurt Jose Benavidez, like not once. Danny Garcia was the king at 140 at one time. I think that was the best weight class where Danny Garcia was just killing it. And he was that guy at 140. I don't think he was ever really, really that guy at welterweight. And then he moves up to 154 pounds. And Al the Pal, thank you for the donation. Guys, we do appreciate you when you donate to the show, and we go to your donation right away. Here for the $5 deal at Jack in the Box, a Jumbo Jack taco, curly fries, and a drink, all for $5.
Really?
Yeah.
Shit. I don't know.
I haven't been a Jack in the Crack in a while, but
I don't know if we have Jack in a Box here.
oh, okay,
I
maybe it's a
honestly
West
don't.
Coast. Maybe it's like a West Coast thing.
Maybe.
They don't have it in Vancouver, but obviously they have it like just across the border, which I go like often. But anyways, that's not the point. Going back to Danny Garcia, obviously Al the Paddle, we appreciate you. Danny Garcia, like he hasn't been that dominant since, and we've seen him, lost to Keith Thurman, lost to Sean Porter, if I'm not mistaken, and then obviously gets the loss to Errol Spence, and then moves up. And I was thinking, well, you didn't really dominate welterweight though. and then you move up to 154, but it's Danny Garcia. He's actually one of my favorite boxers of all time. So I'm very excited to see what Danny Garcia we get in the ring. I just always thought like length and size, Danny was a little bit small for 154. Erislandy Lara is obviously going to be bigger than him in the ring, but Lara, I think what Danny Garcia's team is hoping is that he's aged, that he still doesn't have that skill or
It's
doesn't
also
move
a catch
around very
weight.
well.
This is also
Yes,
a catch
this
weight.
is like a 156 or 57.
57 catch weight
Yeah.
for Lara's WBA middleweight title. If you go on BoxRec, be careful because BoxRec and the WBA had a falling out, so they no longer recognize the WBA.
But it's for a title,
Yeah,
so
but this is for a middleweight title. So this
yeah,
is why
and
this
it's still
catch
in
weight.
the middleweight range, but of course the catch weight. But this is such an important fight for Danny Garcia because I think business wise, if he wins this fight, then we could probably get some more interesting fights at 154 pounds. And Danny Garcia has always been a guy that's brought in boxing fans. Like he's that dude. So for me, I think Lara is going to win by decision. But listen, I wouldn't be surprised at all if Danny was able to get it done. The only reason I'm not rocking with Danny in this fight is because number one, I respect Lara a lot. He's been on a tear, and it's that layoff. That layoff really worries me. That's too long of a layoff. Even going from Spence to Jose Benavidez, and you weren't even able to hurt Benavidez in that fight, and then taking an extremely long layoff. And I know it's business, some other stuff as well, but it's that layoff that worries me, where I don't want to bet on Danny Garcia. But the odds for, as you heard Bryan say, the decision to take Lara hasn't come out yet. Hopefully that comes out soon. Maybe by tomorrow because it is Wednesday. But this to me is still the most interesting fight because I really do feel that Danny has a chance in this fight, but it's like, what Danny Garcia are we getting? We've only seen him once at 154 pounds. So this will be definitely an interesting fight. Keep the comments coming, guys, because we are going to get to them. But Bryan, let's kind of stick with the card a little bit here and just kind of go through it really quickly because Calen Plant is fighting as well. This is a fight against Trevor McCumbee. And Calen Plant, I mean, he's been great on social media, keeps it real, as we were saying. But this is a guy that obviously, you know, there was even talk about him and Edgar Berlanga.
Hopefully that's next.
Never know. Yeah. I think this is a fight where he knocks out Trevor McCumbee. He gets a stoppage against Trevor McCumbee. He should.
Yeah, and I kind of wish, because Edgar got thrusted into this Canelo Alvarez fight. I mean, once he signed with Eddie Hearn, especially,
Yeah,
who I'm not sure has a hand in this fight, but at least it's not being promoted by Eddie Hearn. It's being promoted by TGV Promotions, which they do PPC. My question is whether or not Calen Plant is going to look sharp in this fight, and whether or not he's going to just automatically warrant, all right, you're back in the title picture.
Yeah, I think his performance is definitely going to be key. And we've seen him, I mean, against Canelo, struggled against the ropes, right? So this is a guy named Trevor McCumbee who does have skill. He doesn't have, like, they call Caleb Plant Sweet Hands Plant for a reason because Caleb's got speed. He does have a really nice left hook. But I think this is a fight where Caleb Plant is going to show that he's still Caleb Plant. And we saw Caleb Plant have a great performance as well against Anthony Durrell. He's got power. And Trevor McCumbee, he's been dropped before. He's undefeated. He's 28-0.
But who is he beating also? That's
exactly. This is a guy that got dropped by Felipe Romero. Like, I go back. I remember that fight. Being like, how did you get dropped by Felipe Romero? So this is interesting for sure. I'm excited to see Calen Plant back. Another fight that I'm very interested in, and this is probably the second fight I'm most interested in, is Stephen Coolboy Steph Fulton against Carlos Castro. Very tough fight, Bryan. This is not a walk for Stephen Fulton, and he's moving up to 126 pounds. Last time we saw him, in a way, destroyed him. Absolutely washed him. But this is a guy that before that fight, I was the one saying here, yo, Coolboy Steph is in the pound for pound top 10 for me. That's what I was saying. He was like number 10 on my list. Goes and fights in a way, gets dominated, but he's still that guy. Really interested in seeing what he does at 126 pounds. I think he beats Carlos Castro by decision, but not an easy fight because Castro does have power.
Castro's been dropped. Castro's been stopped. He gave Luis Nery a run over 2.5 years ago too, which should be noted. But I think ultimately Stephen Fulton's going to win this fight. All that being said,
Before we get up and out of here, one more fight to mention. Rolly is going to be fighting in this fight.
Better be
Manuel
careful.
Jaimes. Yeah. I mean, this is a fight that Rolly, I think, has to win. I think it's make or break for him because the last two performances from Rolly were not very good. And this is a guy that if he gets knocked out in this fight, because Manuel does have power, it's going to look bad, right? You get stopped by Isaac Cruz. You get stopped by Ishmael Barroso. Technically, he didn't get stopped. He got the stoppage. And that was a fight where everyone's like, why did that fight get stopped? And then obviously we've seen what Barroso has done, and good for him because he kind of had his moment and is still going underneath the radar, by the way. But Rolly has not been very impressive.
He hasn't won a fight convincingly in over 3 years. So Rolly Romero needs to absolutely, and this is them giving it to him. Here's your opportunity to salvage whatever potential stardom you have left. We've seen you get knocked out on a big stage twice. Two other guys who are stars. Gervonta Davis is a pound for pound guy, and Isaac Cruz, while we were talking about, may have been a little overrated. Still is somebody who, like, he knocked you the fuck out, and that's something that people are going to remember, right? As Luis Porto says in the comments, Rolly is still concussed from Pitbull.
But you know what? I thought he fought pretty well against Tank until he got knocked out. Like, I had him up on the cards, actually.
Yes.
Yeah.
And he probably had moments against even Pitbull when he was actually boxing until, he was getting caught too much and had the backpedal or whatever the case may be. So, listen, this is going to be a tough one for him, but this is set up for him to get this win. I don't know if he's going to do it, to be honest with you, and the odds makers have him as a favorite, but it's a slight favorite, kind of like what Erislandy Lara is. He's in that 2-1, maybe 3-1 territory at most, which is not a lot for somebody who is being thrown a bone, so to speak, in the sport.
All right, well, let's quickly get to some comments. Big Surge. I hope Danny wins in great fashion. I've always liked his personality since he began in 140. Hopefully no rust for Danny. And Father Age shows up on Lara. I think that's what Danny Garcia's team is hoping for. But Danny versus Crawford for the world title at 100.
That's a fight that should have happened years ago also.
Yeah.
I wanted Terrence Crawford to fight Danny Garcia. That would have been massive.
That's a
fight.
blockbuster fight at welterweight.
I don't know if it still is, but
I think if Danny has a good performance against Lara, and we're both taking Lara to win, but I think there's conversations there. But 154 is interesting. Like,
154
I would
for it, yeah.
Right. I think he could fight Fundora. Why not? I think he could fight Tim Tszyu. Why not?
Crawford might have to fight Fundora next.
So. I'm all for that, and I take Crawford between rounds 1 through 6. I you know what I mean? Like
1 through 6.
Fundora looked really good. Like, he looked good in his last fight, and he didn't fight how he normally fights. But it's Fundora. It's Bud Crawford, like pound for pound, the best in the world.
If Tim Tszyu doesn't get split open, like
he doesn't win that fight. Fundora
yeah,
doesn't win that fight if Tim Tszyu. Yeah, I wish there was a rematch for that.
Also, man, Canelo by KO, Lara KO, Plant unanimous decision, Rolly KO, Cool Boy UD, Villa KO, and Jonathan Lopez. I'm excited about.
Yeah, definitely.
By knockout. I think Jonathan Lopez. He's gonna be one of the guys who I think could have performance of the night contender for real.
Yeah, for sure. But this is, once again, I think it's actually a sneaky good card. Jesus, friend of the show, would disagree. Let us know if you guys are taking any upsets in this fight. Edgar Berlanga, Danny Garcia. If you see Rolly losing, let us know in the comments below if you're watching this after. But also, if you like the content, hit that like and subscribe button. Keep in mind, guys, we're actually going to be doing a post-fight live show. So we will be hanging out with you after Canelo Alvarez and Edgar Berlanga. So come and kick it with us. We'll be breaking down the whole entire card, talking about Canelo and Berlanga as well. So make sure to join us for the post-fight show. Brian, any final thoughts before we get up and out of here?
Look, it's an interesting card. I think that the guys who really need to show up are Edgar Berlanga, even if it's in a loss. Like, if he doesn't get his ass absolutely handed to him, it's a win, because as you said, there will be other opportunities. Like, if he is competitive, he can gain stock from this and eventually
Him and
return to
Jaime
the title
Munguia,
picture.
him and
Yeah.
Diego Pacheco, like there's good fights to make.
Yes.
Very good fights to make. And Berlanga's good for the sport of boxing, in my opinion. He's great.
I agree. He's a personality that he is somebody that people are going to be divided over. He's going to provoke strong reactions one side or the other. There are people who absolutely love him and think he has a lot of potential and think that he can be a champion. And there are people who despise him, probably more people on this end, but people who absolutely can't stand him, hope he gets knocked out, whatever. And those kinds of guys are good for the sport. And he
Yes.
leans into that. He leans into that, you know, and he, again, visually, he just looks like somebody who has star quality. He has just like this look. And again, as you mentioned, like dudes like Fat Joe and Tracy Morgan and a whole bunch of people like are tuning out for this fight. I kind of wish this was in New York because
I
it
wish
would
it
feel
was too.
different.
Yeah.
Canelo Alvarez would still win, but I think it would actually be a bigger draw if the fight was in New York as opposed to Vegas.
I think it'd be massive if it was in New York.
Yeah,
like
I thought it could have been at the Garden
crazy.
too.
Yeah,
Easily.
yeah.
Or Barclays.
I think I would love for it to be at the Garden because it's just like it's MSG. But I just think if it was in New York, it would be awesome, just for both sides, actually, for Canelo and also for Berlanga. But you know what? It's in Vegas, and I think a lot of boxers love fighting in Vegas, so it is what it is. That's where Canelo likes to fight. But nonetheless, like I said, we're going to have a post-fight show for you guys, and we'll be breaking it all down. Thank you so much for rocking with us early this morning. If you're here on the West Coast, it's only 7:47 right now, not even 8 a.m. So thank you so much. Also, UFC.
Yeah.
Yes, UFC.
The same, not even just
Hemisphere?
the same city. It's also like, isn't it on the same strip? I
It
don't know.
is, man.
It's like
Sphere.
right
It's like
by. It's so
it's kind of
that's
off
another,
strip, but yeah.
that's I don't know Vegas like that, but that's another thing. It's like they're both having a pissing contest over who's gonna have, just the Mexican card in September or whatever the case may be.
I would go with Fat Joe.
No, you go with Bad Bunny. If Bad Bunny, I don't think Bad Bunny's gonna walk him out.
No, that's the thing. I don't think that Bad Bunny's gonna walk him out. But like,
if Bad Bunny was gonna say, if Bad Bunny would do it, you take Bad Bunny all day.
Easily,
all due respect to Fat Joe,
but
I get what you're
But
saying.
I think you go with, like, if I'm Berlanga, I'm going more with like a New York style.
I don't know if Fat Joe's trying to rap, so.
No, but he got some classics.
Hey, he came out with Don Omar, so that was that was good. Although Don Omar, I think I don't think he rapped at all. I think they just fucking listened to Bandolero.
Didn't Canelo come out with, or was that J Balvin? Canelo came out with someone one time. I forget.
It might have been J Balvin.
Okay, it might have, but Canelo's come out with. Who is Canelo going to come out with? Right? Like, I love walkouts. They're a part of boxing. I absolutely eat it up. So as soon as we see who either of these guys are going to walk out with, imagine if Canelo gets Bad Bunny and Berlanga doesn't. That would be the worst. But
actually, not for nothing. I actually like the boxing card objectively more than the UFC card. UFC's got some bangers on it, but I think the UFC card is a little top heavy. The boxing one like actually has some interesting undercard fights, whereas the actual main event is going to be one-sided.
But even then, I think it's still interesting. I think people still want to see how Canelo's going to look, and I think people are really interested in how Berlanga's going to look, regardless. And that's what I mean, like, Berlanga is a guy that is captivating. But we're going to get into all of that in the post-fight show. Remember, hit that like and subscribe button. Follow us at the Mandatory TKO. And we'll see you on, Ryan Hong. Ryan, good friend of the show. Canelo by knockout in the 9th round. Ryan's been able to predict some things in the past.
You get some good money on that. Well, yeah, that's why I put it up there. Ryan also has some smoke for me in the comments. I always appreciate it.
Disco shirt. Yeah. Ryan's one of my favorites. I'm not going to lie to you. All right, guys. We are going to, you're still going with comments. Berlanga walking out with Freddie Mercury because he's going to join him in retirement.
That was funny. I just had to throw that up there. All right. We had a hard out that we already missed. We're going to get out of here.
All right. But guys,
post-fight show Saturday. We'll be back. Post-fight show Saturday night after the fight, after Canelo Alvarez beats Edgar Berlanga. If UFC is still going on, we're still going to go live. We'll just watch it together as Sean O'Malley probably retains, but we'll see.